AskReddit by Cesna Black Belt. What's your most gatekeeping culinary opinion? If you change a recipe when you make it, you are not allowed to rate it in the reviews without making the original. Nothing worse than someone rambling about the 14 changes they made to a recipe, and then giving it a 3-star. I was literally just thinking about that today. I made a recipe from a site that I have made probably 24 times. Always comes out great. This time I increased it by 50% exactly. I did everything the same. Just increased it. I've even made it enough I could tell the texture wasn't quite right and cooked it for longer. Correct move. It was still not very good. Edible, but not half as good as it usually is. I was just thinking about this was the first time I made this, I would never make it again. You must make a recipe exactly the first time if you are going to judge it. If that isn't your thing, no big deal, but don't assume that whatever you are doing will make it better or won't matter when you don't have a baseline. Burning shit doesn't make it Cajun. Oh, I have another one. Just because it's spicy doesn't make it Cajun, you shitbag chip companies. Edit, only one that can get away with it is Zapp's Cajun Crawtators. Anthony Bourdain was right. Butter is the secret ingredient. Butter makes it better is the first rule of cooking, followed closely by an ounce of good sauce hides a pound of mistakes. I think everyone, both food service workers and general public, should take a food safety course. Deleted. Most people's knives are so dull as to be next to useless. I got a sharpening stone a couple of years ago after getting a really good knife for Christmas. It makes a huge difference. There's nothing more tedious and demotivating than trying to cut vegetables and meat with a blunt kitchen knife. If you don't allow chicken to brown when you're pan frying it, just don't. A lot of people don't realize you shouldn't crowd your meat when you're browning it. Wash your filthy hands. I don't want food poisoning again. Also, if you use a glass cutting board, we can't be friends. Similarly, I'd take a gloveless kitchen with cooks who care about hygiene any day of the week over people thinking gloves absolve you of needing to wash your hands. You cannot trust your oven thermometer. Get a separate one and use it to calibrate your oven. Mine will tell me it's hot about 100 degrees before it's actually at temp. Very annoying. When my family moved into our new house we didn't know this was a thing. We didn't realize what was happening until we baked half a bowl of cookie dough, only for them to need several minutes more than the directions said. Then we baked the second half of the bowl for that long and they were nearly burnt by the time we pulled them out. I've done many a BBQ contest back home in Texas. The best wood to use in my opinion is pecan. My gatekeeping. The worst tasting wood is liquid smoke. Celery is not just as good when used as a replacement for onion. Will, you fucking monster. IDK Hoolies, but fuck Will. Freshly ground black pepper is so much better than pre-ground, like the stuff in shakers at restaurants. That was one of the weirder takeaways from the Franklin Barbecue Cookbook. He actually prefers pepper that has lost some of its edge from being aged after grinding. Lemon and lime have two very different flavors. My entire family seems to think that they taste the same and will substitute one for another. There are plenty of times where one will do in a pinch if you don't have the other, but does your entire family lack taste buds? I have a few about Cajun food. And X200B. Jambalaya is a dry rice dish. If someone is serving a sauce over rice and calling it jambalaya, they have no idea what that dish should be. And X200B. Cajun does not equal so spicy it can't be eaten. Most Cajun food is full of flavor and not all that spicy. And X200B. I have been to a few restaurants and seen dishes to the effect of pasta with Cajun sauce. I don't know WTF Cajun sauces, but in all my years, no one in my family ever made it or heard of it. Cajun sauce, that's what a meth head in Ville Platte calls his sperm. If you can't take a full bite of your sandwich or burger in one go, it is a fundamental failure. If your sandwich or burger requires a skewer to maintain integrity, it has fundamentally failed. If you want more filling, scale horizontally, not vertically. And those bricks who pour shitty cheese sauce all over the top of a burger? Fuck those bricks. While recipes are useful, folks should prioritize why things work in a recipe over just memorizing a recipe. Shout out to Alton Brown and Kenji. MSG makes average food delicious, and takes delicious food over the top. For the longest time I couldn't figure out what an MSG was, and I'm from South Asia. Then I looked at the labels of a thing we call tasting salt here. Monosodium glutamate. Finally it all clicked. Smashing a fistful of tater tots and pressing them onto a plate isn't a hash brown, Greg. Why is this giving me so many good breakfast ideas for my half bag of frozen tots? Stop calling mayo with anything mixed into aioli. Mayoli. Please scrape the food off your chopping board with the non-cutting edge of your knife. That is all. I ended up just buying a bench scraper and telling my husband to use that because I can't break him of the sharp edge thing. I'm of the opinion that you can do whatever the fuck you want with food, but if you fundamentally change a dish, you have to change its name. It's all about expectations. If I go into a restaurant and order a carbonara, then when it arrives they say, oh, we make it with pepperoni snack sausages and cream cheese, then it's no longer a fucking carbonara. It's not necessarily gatekeeping, but things are called things for a reason. Imagine the chaos if we just abandoned this. Come on people. Here's our Reuben. It's got pastrami and coleslaw. Most recipes you find online use way too little spices, 1 teaspoon of cumin. Unless it's a meal for one pho. I look up a recipe for the list of ingredients and then make up my own measurements from there. If you don't eat vegetables, I assume you're emotionally immature. Expensive high-grade tomatoes are always worth it. Homegrown tomatoes are even more worth it. Homemade whipped cream is and always will be better than the fake store-bought stuff. Seasoning without measurements is way more fun than seasoning with measurements. I've stopped caring about teaspoons and tablespoons and just throw stuff into the pan until it tastes good. I agree. My only issue with this approach is I find it hard to replicate things. At the very least I try and think to myself, twice as much of this than that, or half as much of this, etc. Helps me at least qualify what I'm doing at the very least. A shit ton of condiments on burgers doesn't equals better tasting. Who doesn't like a sloppy dripping pile of mess masquerading as a burger? My friend was in Maine. Stopped at a place and their chicken parm was chicken nuggets with ketchup and American cheese. If he told me the name I would Molotov cocktail that place so that culinary abomination could never be made there again. I had a poutine that was crinkle cut fries, chicken gravy, and shredded cheddar. As a Canadian, I almost burned the restaurant down. You shouldn't review a recipe if you didn't follow it. This is mostly aimed at online sites where people say they didn't like the recipe but changed half the ingredients and cooked it differently. This apple pie recipe is terrible. I followed the recipe exactly, except I replaced the butter with olive oil, the flour with gluten-free soy paste, the sugar with baking soda, and the apples with cockroaches. It didn't taste anything like an apple pie and my whole family hated it. 0 out of 5 stars. Fresh thyme is the answer. Blending a tub of Cool Whip with a block of cream cheese and throwing it in a pie crust does not make cheesecake. Call it something else. That shit ain't cheesecake. Full stop. It's not a cheesecake, but equal parts cream cheese and marshmallow fluff makes a fantastic fruit dip.